Are you rich?
Rich?
Not at all.
I am. I'm breathing. I'm not in oxygen, so I feel rich.
Financially? No.
Is there like a minus, a negative number? Yeah. She's in my headset.
But like rich in happiness, yeah.
No, really, but I think good enough.
We're doing all right, and there's a lot of people that I know that would be doing a lot worse.
You know, not as good, we're not as well off as some, better off than others.
But I think as far as rich as in thinking about retirement and everything like that, definitely not.
Are you scared of running out of money?
It's a good question.
Yes, I think about it a lot.
Do I want to, like, live fast, die young, or...?
We're in that limbo where we genuinely don't know what the next 20, 30 years could be.
It's weird, like I just haven't thought about it that much.
I'm just going to make sure I have the money to live somewhere and hopefully breathe good air wherever it is.
My accountant looked really sad when I told him both my parents lived to be 100. He said, this means I'm at risk of longevity. That's when you outlast your finances.
What does your aging journey look like? Welcome to the best 30 years, helping to make your aging journey the very best it can be. As Jackie Mason once said, I have enough money to last me the rest of my life, unless I buy something. Welcome to our third episode. You know, many of us were raised to never talk about sex or money. So here's a little bit of sex.
Okay. In a retirement place, not this one, people were getting a bit cheesed off a man who used to tell everybody what a great lover he'd been when he was younger. So his 80th birthday coming up, they decided to play a bit of a joke on him and hired a high-class call girl to call on him. So she knocked on his door and said, opened her coat, I'm here to give you super sex. He said, I think I'll have the soup.
So in this episode, we're going to talk about money. In fact, we're going to talk about even more than that. The very sexy subjects of financial and legal planning.
We know that we have to understand our financial needs and constraints as we age. But it's very hard to plan when you don't know how long you're planning for. And the mere thought of this can be so terrifying that we hide from it.
What about legal preparations?
Do you know who'll take responsibility for your decisions if you can't?
When we're considering entering into planning documents for our future, we are looking at giving legal power to other people over our affairs. And in doing so, we need to be objective to ensure that we give that power to people who are suitably qualified and who don't have other outside or external influences who may seek to take advantage of that power that the person has over our affairs.
Great. And what about finances? Is there a tip, for example, regarding the pension?
For most retirees, the pension will be a key pillar to their retirement plan. So make sure you understand what the impact is going to be on your pension entitlement. The pension is calculated under two tests, an asset test and an income test. And I kind of think of them like a Rottweiler and a Chihuahua. You know, the asset test doesn't bite you first, but it typically bites you harder. When it comes to maximising your pension entitlement, the trick is to get those two tests as close as possible, because whichever one produces the lowest pension is the amount that Centrelink is going to pay you.
Legal and financial concerns need to be considered as we age and determine where we're going to live. But so does a need for social interaction.
Because we humans belong to a social species, the sense of belonging is fundamental not only to our mental health, but also to our emotional security. And the greatest sign of belonging is the sense that we are being accepted by a social group, whether that's family, friends, or neighbours.
As you age, it can feel like the opposite is happening.
The things you take for granted can change as you age. Your family may move away. You may have to stop driving. Isolation and fear are the two most grinding emotions for an older person.
But they don't need to be.
You don't need to be isolated and fearful. Retirement villages are a very successful option with over 2,000 villages across Australia. Research shows that for around 30% of new residents, their mental and physical health improves when they move to a village.
I was concerned of coming to a village. I didn't like the word retirement. So I fought that for a short time, but after we did move here, absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think that's what I enjoy here, interacting with other people with similar tastes. Not always the same political persuasions, but we steer around them.
The good news is that we are all going to live longer. The average age of death in Australia is 81 for men and 85 for women. But this is the average, with half living way past 81 and 85. 30 or more years in retirement is increasingly common. What will our health be like? How will we look after ourselves, especially if we have lost a partner? Can we rely on family? Planning ahead and thinking, and then taking action will pay big dividends in our future quality of life.
I think the biggest mistake most people make is that they don't plan. So it's that old adage of failing to plan is planning to fail. And you really need to get on top of that. You really need to look at what are the opportunities. A lot of people have most of their wealth tied up in their home. So if you're going to downsize, typically you're going to downsize from a bigger house to a smaller house, but you're also going to downsize from a more expensive house to a cheaper home. In that financial downsize, you need to work out what the smartest thing to do is with any money that's left over, how to invest that for as long as you're going to need the money invested, but also how to invest that to work hard enough to generate the income that you need.
Retirement villages deliver peace of mind that you have taken action to set yourself up for the rest of your life, which partly explains why most villages have waiting lists for people to join. So it is best to start planning ahead of events.
We're all ageing, but we all have our own unique story. Let's call this one Elisa's story.
Elisa's partner died suddenly, so in a flash her future went from retirement adventures to emptiness. Her friends rallied, but she couldn't lean on them forever. She needed guts to make a new life. She's even started dating, but she's not partnering up again. Turns out she likes her independence.
A retirement village is perfect for people who both like their independence and people. But what triggers the decision?
One day I was on the train, about 2 weeks after my husband died, I was on the train and saw these places being built. Saw they were called retirement apartments for independent living, because I never would have moved to a retirement village because that's for old people and I didn't want to be put in with old people. So it was ideal for me.
We thought it was about time that we made a change into something that we didn't have to sweep up the gum leaves and catch the branches every 2 or 3 days, have all the work involved in our own place.
I knew I'd have to move some stage, so why not do it now and enjoy it?
Sounds like a good decision.
Once you're in here, there's really nothing to worry about. Everything's sort of set for you. It's still independent living. You're still living like you're living in your own house, but it's more, everything's that much easier.
Retirement villages are structured to support you physically and financially, and the sector is heavily regulated with the Retirement Village Act in every state.
From a legal perspective, the retirement village sector is a mature industry with legislation in each of our states that goes back for over 50 years. In each state, there are different entities who run villages and operate them. There are churches, not-for-profit charities, and also for-profit operators. And each one of these operators will offer you a number of different options when it comes to different contracts. These different contracts give you flexibility and allow you to protect your estate planning in the future and to make the appropriate decisions.
And the cost?
Village homes are priced around 80% of normal homes, so you downsize with a sizable nest egg to live on. The village contract is like paying rent in advance. You pay an upfront amount, and when you leave, you get that money back, less the rent for the years in the village, usually capped at 7 years and around 35%. That is the only profit the operator makes. By law, they are not able to profit from your weekly fees and other charges while you're in the village, keeping costs down.
So what should you do when you receive the contract?
The most important thing when you receive the contract from the village that you decide to move into is that you seek the appropriate advice from a lawyer who understands the Retirement Villages Act in your state so that you can have full assurance of what it is that you're agreeing to when you enter into that contract.
We signed up. We were given a contract to go through to ensure that we were comfortable with it. So I gave it to my solicitor to go through it and have a look at it and to advise me of what we needed to do if anything should arise out of that contract that needed attention.
Every village is different, with different offerings.
The contract was fine. I didn't have to say where I was going next because here you've got the 4 stages. I'm in independent, then I go to supported if I have to, low care, high care, dementia. And they're all here on the one spot.
The weekly fee is static. It doesn't increase or whatever. So you can actually budget, for how many years that you think you'll have.
My son says we paid far too much because all these free things I keep telling him about and all these activities that would be charged for somewhere else. And he says, well, you must have paid too much, which isn't true.
Importantly, the operator has to stay with you to the end to collect their cash, so you have that ongoing certainty of support.
We have been physically active all our lives, but
still playing tennis and
there are no guarantees on how
walking.
long you're going to live. We mightn't be here this time tomorrow, but we might be here in 5 or 10 years' time. There's no guarantees. Who knows? But living here would be with the promise from LDK to take us through to the end of our lives with decent, caring people. What's not to like about a promise like that?
Sounds like an easy decision, but everyone has different issues to consider.
A driving force for us was that we didn't want to be separated. We didn't want one of us in a residential care place, one of us in our own home. We wanted to be together. In fact, I wanted to look after Lynn right through. And that's where we can here. So that I don't see anywhere else.
There are different models of retirement villages, some with full independent living, some with 24/7 nurses on call, some that have residential aged care built in so that you know you won't be separated as a couple as one partner ages and needs higher levels of care. Plus you can get home care delivered into your village home, keeping you independent longer.
Residents also tend to offer each other support.
In the retirement village, it's like a community within the community. And out there, we still have our petrol stations, supermarkets, doctors, hospitals. But in here, we have our friends. And we have more friends here than we had in the court where we used to live.
Yes, yeah.
My husband finds it very easy to make friends with men and women, actually.
Our relationship with ageing can be very odd. It so often takes us by surprise, despite the fact we only need to look in a mirror to see it happening. We can deny ageing or embrace it by planning for it right now. For as Dr. Phil McGraw once said, if you don't have a plan, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and before you know it, you're looking back and saying, I should have had a plan.
This afternoon, Meredith and I are conducting a trivia, which we do once a month, and we get about 40 people along. And
but having a gym on site and all of the social things is really great.
So much to do that your mind is active, and part of health is keeping that mind active, and that's what you can do in a village.
It's true. Maintaining our independence is key by keeping our hearts, minds and bodies active. Plus, we need to avoid stress, which is known to increase the risk of hypertension, heart attack, stroke and even depression. Loneliness is also a known cause of stress.
When we talk about loneliness, it's important we make a distinction. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Solitude's important. We all need time out, away from others, where we can recharge our batteries and spend some time reflecting and recharging ourselves. Loneliness can be framed best by the question that Mother Teresa used to ask when she used to come out to places just like Sydney when she was out alive, which was, is there anything worse than the feeling of being unloved or unwanted? Unfortunately, we live in a culture that says once you have passed a certain age threshold, you have nothing to contribute. You are no longer a productive member of society, you're a consumption unit and a problem. And that weighs heavily on people. And loneliness is that feeling that I have no role in society to play anymore.
There is a stigma about feeling lonely, but we can do something about it. And as a society and as a community, it's really important to look out for those who might be lonely. And for those who are lonely, it's really important to feel comfortable talking to your GP because they can do something to help.
Connecting to your community means not only your neighbours, but your extended community. The way they reach out at places like the Wayside Chapel in Sydney.
And at Wayside, most of our volunteers actually are exactly the age of just entering into retirement or a few years into it. Because for people who are sleeping rough, they may have missed out on the affection of a parent or an uncle or an auntie or a grandma or a grandpa. And we can't be Wayside Chapel without our grannies and grandpas offering that granny and grandpa energy that is so essential to the healing and recovery of so many of our city's most vulnerable.
So it's vital to look after each other. But it's also important to look after ourselves. Let's grab some more tidbits on how to do this from Leon.
So what legal areas are there that we need to make sure we take care of at this stage of our lives? What documents can we enter into so that we know that our future is appropriately planned for so that we can sleep well at nights? The first document is the will. The will deals with our estate after we pass away. Now, we've all heard of terrible stories of people being left out of wills and wills being contested, and the type of conflict that families can have when someone passes away. An appropriately drafted will ensure that any possibility of that conflict is mitigated and minimised as much as possible. The second document is a power of attorney. This document gives someone the appropriate rights and powers to make financial transactions on your behalf and also to sign documents on your behalf. Again, choosing the most appropriate person is critical when you're drafting this document. The third document, the appointment of enduring guardian, is a document that gives someone else the power to make decisions about where you live and what healthcare you receive if you can't make those decisions for yourself. Including the family is so important when looking at this document so that all your loved ones can come around and make those decisions together. The final document, an advanced care directive, is critical so that your healthcare providers can know what your wishes are in terms of whether or not you want to be resuscitated and what care you wish to receive if you need it, but can't verbalise that or make that decision at that point in time. All these documents are critical to be worked in together for your planning for the future, and your lawyer will discuss this all with you when you make the plans with them.
Some people think it's impossible to work out how much money we'll need as we age. There are too many variables: inflation, interest rates, the stock market, let alone how long you'll live or if you're going to develop ailments. I can understand why people feel helpless.
Dealing with the ageing journey can not only involve planning finances and legalities and communicating with loved ones, it can also sometimes require us to give ourselves a push, to be proactive, to seize the day, to deal with our egos, our quirks, our inadequacies. Sometimes it's about confronting ourselves and behaving like a grown-up. And if that sounds too hard, don't feel helpless. We're here to help you. And as this episode is about legals, financials and retirement villages, let's go to Rachel for some tips.
If you're thinking about downsizing into a retirement village, my top 3 tips would be, firstly, it's all about the vibe. No one ever moved into a retirement village where they felt like a square peg in a round hole and said it was great because it was affordable. So make sure you get a really good sense of the vibe. Make sure you crunch the numbers and understand exactly what it's going to cost you to live in the village, ingoing, ongoing and outgoing, together with any implications for your pension, rent assistance and home care package costs. And lastly, make sure you look at your contract through 3 lenses. What are your rights, what are your responsibilities and what are your costs?
Being sensible is important, but do our residents ever kick up their heels? What about unbridled passion?
Define passion.
Oh, yes, we've had a couple of... Yes, we have.
Well, I'm not in their bedroom, so I don't know.
I've had a couple of people meeting, yes, 2 couples that I know of. There might be more, 3 couples maybe.
They've all got a smile on their face, so something must be going on.
Bring it on.
So now we've looked at retirement villages, but will they suit you? Is there enough privacy? Is there enough community? Is it better than other options for you? And what if you're a loner? What if you look at pictures of people in retirement villages happily socialising together and think you'd rather be alone?
For more information regarding the specialists, accommodation or subjects featured in this episode, please go to thebest30years.com.au.